again. Let's get started. Our panel is up here on stage. I have the honor of introducing our panel. I'll start off with our moderator, Kelly Krauskopf, who is in her 5th season with Pacers basketball management staff after 19 seasons as the WNBA's Indiana Fever's top executive. Now, you're going to applaud a little bit more because I'm going to keep going. She's had a wonderful career so far. Let's see. Kelly joined the Pacers Sports and Entertainment in 1999 to build and lead the WNBA franchise. Under her guidance, and this is amazing, the Fever reached the playoffs 12 times, which is an amazing number, 12 consecutive years, more than any other team in the league, and reached the Eastern Conference Finals 5 straight seasons and 8 times overall. During this time, the team also made 3 WNBA final appearances and captured the WNBA championship in 2012. Now let's give her a round of applause. Oh my God, it keeps going. And Kelly, no, you deserve all of this. You know, Kelly provided executive leadership for the startup in esports, which I find incredibly fascinating, in the NBA 2K League for 2017 and 2018. In 2018, the Indiana Pacers made Kelly Krauskopf the first female assistant general manager in NBA history. So let's give her another applause. Now, our next panelist is also well-versed in NBA esports, Brendan Donahue. He's the president of the NBA 2K League. In that role, Brendan Donahue oversees the first official esports league operated by U.S. professional sports leagues. A sports industry veteran with more than 2 decades of experience in team and league operations, Donahue manages the league that features 24 teams and is celebrating its 5th season in 2022 this year. Next, let me introduce Butler University's Vice President of Strategy and Innovation, Melissa Beckwith. Melissa is responsible for leading the university's forward-looking efforts to ensure Butler is well-positioned to leverage future opportunities and emerging trends in the ever-changing higher education landscape. One of our recent projects in the university is the new state-of-the-art Butler Esports Park, which focuses on curriculum innovation, serving K-12 community, and aligning 2 of Indianapolis' economic engines, sports and technology. Our third and final panelist, Walter Wang, began serving as a consultant to TSM FTX. Wow, the $540 million esports organization named by Forbes as one of the world's most valuable in March 2017. He is now COO of TSM FTX, and in his role, Walter provides key operational oversight of critical departments such as partnership, operations, esports, and marketing. Please join me in welcoming everybody to the stage. Now I'll turn it over. I'll turn it over in a second to Kelly, but I have one question, and actually this came from Jeff. Could you explain the mechanism to invest in esports? If you're just an investor from that level, is there a mechanism now? Is it being developed?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, please.
You can invest in esports, yes. You can actually invest in a team. You can invest in an organization. You can be, I would say that's number one, is just like you are buying into a pro sports franchise, there is an investment mechanism in that way.
I would say, and you can speak certainly well, I think it's the investments it's been like wildfire the last 5 years. I think certainly we've had a couple entities buy NBA 2K League franchises, so there's investment certainly at that level. But then there is just this exploding, whether it's turning broadcasts into more professional broadcasts and injecting sponsors, et cetera. Like there's so many, the vendor community in esports is just growing rapidly.
Awesome. Kelly?
Okay. All right. So Mario, thank you so much. And thanks for having us. And our goal today with this great panel is to have you leave here and go home and invest in esports. No, we hope that you really leave here with a whole understanding of this industry that has largely been probably in a space that maybe you haven't been. So we think we're going to uncover and share with you really what competitive esports is and kind of how it started. And appreciate Brendan coming from New York and Walter flying here from LA and Melissa coming over from the Butler campus, and look forward to getting into it. So I want to start with just the basics of video gaming. So I'm gonna start real quick with just really what we have in terms of the video gaming industry. So let's just start with video games. This is how esports was born out of video games. If you just look at the numbers of 20 years of industry growth of video games, and that's everything from if you played Mario Brothers, if you played Zelda, if you
Thank
played
you for that.
I had to throw them right. That was for you. You can even go back to Tetris if you want to. Eventually, you know, word games, anything on a mobile device, iPad, PC, you're a gamer. And this industry has really rapidly grown in 20 years. If you just look at just in general the numbers, the billions represent everything that you can buy in gaming. An Xbox, the software, the subscription, game fees. If anybody has a kid that plays Fortnite, you have to buy skins when you're playing Fortnite. So that's how the industry has evolved. And from the gaming industry, there's basically 28% of the population is 50 or over. So don't think of this as an 18-year-old in a basement who can't go to college. This is a very tech-savvy, educated, primary group of people that are engaging in playing video games. And it just ranges in all ages. But an average age is about 34 years old. So from that, we're going to go into competitive esports. And we are going to really talk a little bit more about this industry that Walter and Brendan and really what's happening at the feeder levels for Melissa.
Have you guys seen esports and the E-League?
I don't know if that's sports.
But
It's great mindset.
But I don't know if athlete is the right word. But I mean, you don't break a sweat. I don't consider it a sport.
No, you do.
Watching people play video games isn't like watching people play football. It's like watching people play fantasy football. It is one more step removed from human activity. You understand? It's video games. It shouldn't be on a sports network. It's video games.
But can it truly be a spectator sport? It already is. 71 million watched it last year. They reckon it's going to, by 2017, it'll be 145 million people watching it.
They're actually giving college scholarships for video gaming. And it's even gone to the point that now the government has acknowledged professional video gamers as athletes.
Same way you watch a football match, you can hear the crowd, everyone's cheering the team on, you make friends, there's people you talk to, you play with online. It's all about community, it's being part of something that you're incredibly passionate about.
Trying to establish vision control and coordination.
So a little glimpse, kind of what, that's actually an old video. So it's even more robust than what you just saw. But that is just sort of a look back of what's happened in the last 10 years. And fast forward to really this audience that we're talking about, the audience growth. The pinnacle of the gaming industry is esports, and along with that comes online viewers. This game is basically digitally performed. You're not going, you saw large arenas that are happening all over the world, but you're looking at an audience by 2025 of about 640 million fans and viewers. And this comes in the form of really online, as well as those held in big stadiums. Just to give you an example, this is an old slide, but we thought it was worth sharing with you. If you just look at a League of Legends event in 2016, was the largest viewed event in the world. At that time, it was larger than Major League Baseball World Game 7, larger than the Oscars, State of the Union speech. So this is, again, we're talking about a global event that is, unmatched, and that was years ago. So this is the growth pattern that we're seeing. And now the slide everybody wants to see: money, revenue growth. This is a $1.38 billion global industry. By end of 2022, that's where the expectation. This is from Newzoo, which is an outlet that tracks all of esports revenues. And you just look at just the growth in terms of overall revenue. You're looking at a growth of 13% by 2025. China accounts for nearly a third of the revenues. China and the United States. 60% of those revenues really come from sponsorship. So it's an exact inverse of what happens on traditional sports. Traditional sports is media rights, and in esports, it's sponsorships. And I'll have Walter talk a little bit about sort of how that looks, and as well as Brendan, in terms of where those sponsors and where they're placed and how you see them. But that's a significant growth. And when we were looking at it at Pacer Sports and Entertainment, we were looking at the audience growth in esports, the revenue growth, all of the things that we saw in 10 years, that what's happening at the feeder levels, what Melissa's doing, what's happening at the college level. So there continues to be this meteoric rise in all of those numbers that we felt it was really something that we needed to be involved with. So here locally, Pacers Gaming, Cody Parent, who we hired, the smartest thing that I ever did, or we ever did as a company, was hire Cody to run our esports operation, and he is our team coach, manager, operator of Pacers Gaming. This is a space just really up one floor from where the Indiana Pacers, where I work now, work out. This is where his athletes train. And Walter, who's been around the world, says it's a really nice space, so we appreciate that. Very nice. This is Butler, just a shot of where Melissa, you can look forward to her talking more about what they're doing over at Butler and their campus. And then we've got Brendan, the stage here at Pan Am Plaza this year, if you guys didn't know, but the NBA 2K League held their season here. And I had to put that up because we were the champs of the 3-on-3 tournament. So, but yeah, so this is just to give you an example of this is what's happening globally. And I love that we have such a good mixture here, because between Brendan and Walter and Melissa, we're going to be able to touch the different areas, and then we're going to take questions. So right now, what I want to do is start with Walter. I'm going to throw it to you first. Just if you can just talk and explain to the group, TSM, what a global esports organization is about, kind of how you're structured, and how you monetize yourself, as well as just what would be some comparisons to an NBA franchise or an NFL franchise, the things that we could kind of connect to.
Yeah, absolutely. So TSM FTX, we're a esports team, global esports team. We have about 12 teams. We operate about 12 teams around the world. Teams in the US, Europe, India, and Brazil. Esports is a very global sport because it's all online. We monetize mostly through sponsorship, as you mentioned. And so the way we're structured really is it's pretty similar to a sports team. You can think of us like the Indiana Pacers, but we play video games instead of basketball. And also because we operate multiple teams, we're kind of like Monumental Sports, because they have teams in basketball, hockey, and things like that. And so we kind of do the same thing. We have teams in different games, and in different regions. And the way we're structured is really at least on the athletic side, is in 3 pillars. We have PC, so we have a GM for our PC games. We have a GM for our mobile games, and we have a GM dedicated to League of Legends, because League of Legends is the largest esports in the world. And yeah, we monetize mostly through sponsorship. FTX is our naming rights sponsor. We signed that last year. It was a $210 million deal over 10 years. And yeah.
So that's why you're TSM FTX.
That's what we're named. That's what we're TSM FTX everywhere.
So when you talk about sponsorship, can you just talk a little bit about, how has the sponsor realized their value in a lot of the ways that they, place, I'm assuming place their logo or place advertisements?
Yeah, I mean, this is very similar to traditional sports. I mean, we have logo patches on the jersey. We do social media. And the interesting thing about esports versus traditional sports is that in esports teams actually own the IP rights of the players, right? Yeah. And so we are able to actually basically package their likeness to advertisers. And so they can use our players as part of their commercials, as part of their marketing collaterals. And also we can develop products with these brands, such as Logitech. Logitech is kind of like the Nike of esports, because they produce the keyboards, they produce the mice, this is the gear, like the basketball shoes for basketball. And so we produce, we help them develop their mice, their keyboards and things like that. And then we do social media. We also do a lot of custom content. So we have, in-house production team. We stream on Twitch. And so that's really how a lot of brands derive a lot of value, is that, our players go play at the League of Legends World Championship. I'm going to go in October, I'm going to go to Singapore to watch our team play in the International. It's a $40 million prize pool tournament, right? It's going to be one of the most watched events, I guess, in the world. And our team will be playing. They'll have FTX on their jersey. They'll have Logitech, and that's a lot of branding exposure.
Yeah. And how many viewers, or what would be the expected audience size of the event that you're going to?
At least millions.
Yeah.
Millions will be watching.
Yeah. Brendan, do you give us a little bit of context of the NBA 2K League and maybe take us back to even, when the league was talking about getting into it, when we first started talking about, getting into the space?
Sure. So we just completed our 5th season. So I will say, it's the 2K League is a joint venture between 2K and the NBA. I will say, and as far as revenue streams, certainly sponsorships, media rights, etc. The other big one that we obviously help generate is the league itself is a marketing tool to drive game sales, which that's certainly a big revenue driver for us as well. But I would say, as far as when the league first started, there was so much around education, just in terms of with the sponsors, with staffs, everybody. We had to educate everyone on what exactly we were doing. Are you playing with NBA players? Are you not? So we had to have that education. And so what's been really interesting is over the last 5 years is we went from selling the endemic brands, the headsets, the controllers, and now you're seeing Anheuser-Busch has their own esports person. Google has their own esports person who actually is helping figure out partnerships in that space. And so as far in terms of value, we think there's unbelievable amounts of value. And we also now have a pretty decent data set in terms of we know who our players are, we know who our fans are. And frankly, I think there's just so many myths we're constantly trying to dispel. So there's this whole idea of the players are just, they're sitting in their basement playing a game by themselves. That's a really archaic mindset. So, now it's incredibly communal. We were talking earlier, now it's, where I used to probably play in my room as a kid. Now I'm playing with 10 other people and we're playing squads in a game and we're doing this and that. And it's such a more communal experience. And so, and the other thing I'd say too, the myth is that it's all young people. It's for if I'm a business and I'm trying to get in front of young people, frankly, our fans have incredible amounts of they have more income than you might think, more disposable income. And if you look at who's more likely to buy a luxury car, our fans actually skew much higher. And then the other big one is that our fans are incredibly loyal to sponsors of our league. So they would literally change buying behavior based on who's actually supporting the leagues. They view that as you're helping their community. So it's just some of the things that.
No, that's great. That's great. I just, there was a lot of going into it. Obviously, we were one of the inaugural teams. And we certainly saw, an opportunity to hopefully have some crossover with an NBA fan or just, it's the game of basketball. So I think, is there any findings for you, like in terms of that crossover piece, from an NBA fan or fans that were like, just love the game and now they're kind of, maybe they play video games, maybe they play the 2K game?
Yes, I mean, you said it perfectly the out front. Like, whether you realize it or not, I guarantee half of this room is gaming. If you're on your phone playing Texas Hold'em or playing pool, you're a gamer, and most people in the room probably are.
Yeah.
So as far as go back to your question about the
any fan crossover.
Oh yeah, the fan crossover.
Yeah.
So we've now got strong enough data that suggests that our player and fan base is 2 times more likely to spend money on NBA tickets. They're 5 times more likely to buy NBA League Pass. So we're developing our fans of the future. And frankly, if we stayed in the traditional model of just being on linear TV, people who are 18 to 20, they're not cord cutters, they're cord nevers. And so we've got to get in front of these individuals as to develop the fandom around the NBA. And so that's and basketball. And so that's why the NBA 2K League is so important to us.
Right. So, all right, Melissa, let's talk about what's happening in the college space. And if you can just kind of let everybody know what you guys are doing at Butler. Why did the university care about getting started into esports in terms of curriculum and those types of things?
Sure, happy to do so. So a few minutes ago, you shared the photo of our new Esports Park, which just launched last month. So really it's a 7,500 square foot state-of-the-art land facility that's really become kind of the physical manifestation of a strategy we started talking about 4 or 5 years ago at the university. And there were a lot of reasons we started having the conversation around what does higher ed need to do with esports? Like, why should we even care? Things like we saw more and more students coming out of high school and younger, right, that are spending so much time gaming, but they might be doing it by themselves in isolation. So how do we create a sense of community around that? We were having conversations with the Big East as they were thinking about a traditional athletics conference and what does it look like for a traditional athletics conference to play in an esports, area. We were also thinking about a lot of what was happening here in Indy, which was this intersection of sports and technology, and knowing that the city was really looking at how do we grow our presence in this. So we sat down and we said, all right, we know we need to do something. Higher ed is moving into this space. What does that look like? So Eric Kmeyer, who's our director of our esports program, who's phenomenal, had a really great way to talk about this. And he calls it the 3 C's of esports: competition, curriculum, and community. And so everything we've done over the last 4 years that we now can do in that space is really under those 3 areas. So from a competition perspective, upwards of 650 colleges and universities have some sort of esports organized team play today. According to the National Association of Collegiate Esports, there's about 200 of those that are varsity level teams, which those 200 are giving out $16 million in scholarships, put that in perspective, to recruit students to play esports. And so thinking about how do we begin, just like the high schools, at the college level, create actual competition. And so we've done that in a couple of ways. We have 2 varsity titles and teams, but we have a whole lot of intramural teams as well that we started in a small facility kind of in the basement of our student union, and then more recently have actually moved them into the new space. So there's a lot on the competition side. We're competing within the Big East. Our students are competing against, again, students that are at other national universities, but other international universities. So the competition side's been really great and helpful. On the curricular side, again, we're an institution of higher education, right? So I think how many people in the room, if you're over 35, said to yourself when you were in high school, I'm gonna, make a full-time career out of gaming? Probably none of us, right? It wasn't a thing, then really. And so as we talk about, so much in higher ed, preparing students for the careers of the future, jobs of the future, esports industry is a great one. If it's $1 billion industry, it needs students and talent that have the knowledge, skills, and ability to work in the industry. So then we said, all right, well, let's figure out how we start to create some curriculum around this. So we've done that. We have an esports minor that's a really interdisciplinary minor, business, sports production. That now operates out of this facility where students can use sports broadcasting equipment. They can run the actual events. They're working on the technology in the space. So the space has become a lab. Then the third part is the community piece. And this is where we were really purposeful thinking about if we're going to invest, I mean, because it is an investment on a university perspective. When we think about all the things we can invest in as a university, this is an investment. And so it was really important to us that we figured out how do we build something that supports, again, the broader indie community. So that's looking like we are currently bidding on bringing several esports competitions nationally to be here in Indy at Butler. We're hosting and have 2 esports startups that now live in our esports space, which is super exciting. And then we're doing a lot of partnering with nonprofits to provide greater access to students that may not have access to the equipment with our esports facility. So for us, it's not as much of a monetization strategy, but it's how do we prepare the students, how do we develop the curriculum, and how do we give back?
And do you feel like it's helped you recruit students to the
Yes.
university?
I know we don't have a ton of data. I mean, the new space is going to help incredibly.
Right.
We do have a number of students, about 100 students a year, that when they apply, they say, I'm interested in esports. But anecdotally, we had Eric heard this the other day, a student's family that were moving back in with an older sibling, and they're walking by the esports facility, and the younger siblings are like, I'm going to go here. This is awesome, right? So we do believe that, yes, this is a play for us also to differentiate ourselves in the competitive world of higher ed.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the technology. I think, Walter, you hit on it too. Talk about the other aspects. So we have the athletes, we have the gamers themselves, other things that go into hiring technology-based, backgrounds of people that are in your organization that provide jobs. That, this is more than just the guys that are competing. So if you could kind of touch on what you guys were talking about it earlier about, all these positions that you have open to hire. And so if somebody says, well, what are you looking for? Like what types of positions, what types of jobs?
Yeah, there's a lot of support staff to all our players on our team. I mean, we obviously have a team manager, but from a technical perspective, I mean, simple as IT, right? Our computers are so important. I mean, if a computer goes down during a match, then we lose the match.
Right.
So, and these guys are competing for millions of dollars, and so IT is really important. We have a 20-person in-person production house now. Mm-hmm. So technical equipment from cameras, editors, broadcast experience. In addition, we have a lot of people who need to speak multiple languages now because our team is so global. We have a huge presence in Japan, huge presence in India, huge presence in Brazil. And so a lot of our staff has to be multilingual to manage teams, to communicate with other teams, with the leagues in those areas. And so it's such an early days of esports that it's sort of like the Wild Wild West in every single region. And so we're still trying to, hold together this very fragmented landscape together.
So how many do you employ, basically, do you think?
We employ, right now we're about, I would say, 60 full-time employees. Mm-hmm. And then we have probably like another 60, 70 contractors around the world.
Around the world, yeah.
Around the world, yeah.
Brendan, anything on the
I mean, I guess I would say maybe to take it more hyper-local in terms of, and Kelly mentioned this during when she was presenting, but our 5th season, all of our in-person games and tournaments happen here in Indiana and in the center of town in Indianapolis. And so, and I will say, I saw Jeff earlier from the Indiana Sports Corp. We did an RFP across 15 different cities who had interest in hosting us this season. You should be very proud. Indiana Sports Corp they do you very proud. Like they stood out amongst the rest of the organizations we talked to. And I'm not shocked you get, college, no surprise, Final Four college football championships, NBA All-Star is hosted here because they crush it. And so what I was going to say is we hosted Boys and Girls Club and other groups into the studio when we were here. And the biggest surprise to them is, the players on the stage make up about 15% of our employees. And so, if you're tech savvy, if you can do production work, you want to do, you want to create content, you want to sell sponsorships. There's such and all of this is incremental to the sports business. The entire esports industry that's emerged, really significantly over the last, I'd say, 5 to 8 years. It's growing fast, and it's why Butler, and I will tell you, if you're recruiting people from Butler, like if they're in the esports program, they're likely to be more tech savvy. They're likely to actually have a higher IQ than the general population. And if you want somebody to help you with your social media and content, I guarantee that group will be full of people who can help you. So I think it's a lot bigger than just the people that are on the stage. I'd say it's the biggest thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what makes the industry so, attractive if you're looking at, whether it's investing or you're just kind of following it. I mean, it's so much larger. The ecosystem is really, just keeps growing. And one of the things that was interesting to me when Steve Simon and I were actually touring around a little bit before we jumped into the 2K League and met with a couple of esports organizations, and we met with a group that really primarily runs games for young kids. It's called Super Gaming. And they talked about, the CEO actually was from Indiana. It was funny. But she talked about just this idea of what happens to these kids when they compete and they get in these environments where they're competing because maybe they weren't good at soccer or they weren't the type of kid that was going to be in dance or athlete, but they found this self-esteem and this whole sense of self-worth just through competing and gaming. And it just helped another, parents would come up to her and say, I couldn't get anything out of my kid, and now he's smiling and he feels good about himself and he feels like he's achieving something and he loves his teammates, and it struck us as, again, another way in our society that has this myth about, you're sort of this introverted kid that just like lives on a headset. Of the benefits of what has happened. And Cody and I have talked about that a little bit with the Pacers gaming team, how when they come in, anything that you can share, add to that you see from a benefit standpoint, this whole myth about gamers or just guys that can't communicate. And I would say just the opposite, because they live online and learn how to communicate with each other. I don't know, Walter, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just working in the team environment and communication has been so amazing. I mean, seeing some of these players, some of our players have been 14 years old, right? And then coming in, learning how to be an adult, right? We bring them into LA, they learn how to sort of become an adult, train, become a professional player, and they start earning, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars every year playing as a player. I mean, they learn a lot of life skills, and they have to grow up very quickly because, I mean, some of these players now, they have a lot of fandom, We have some of these players, they have 1-2 million followers on Instagram, 1-2 million followers on Twitter. And every time they stream out of our practice facility or even out of their bedroom or any room, they generate maybe like 40, 50,000 concurrent people watching them. That's filling, stadiums, right? Concurrently every single day.
Yeah.
And so the way they have to be able to navigate the social landscape, contract negotiations, I mean, they learn a lot.
So do you want to explain what concurrent means? Not everybody knows what concurrent viewers mean.
Yeah, so when our players stream usually on a platform like YouTube or Twitch, right? Concurrent viewers really means how many people are watching them at that one moment in time. And so 60,000 people, 50,000 people will be tuning in to watching our players stream them playing games at one time. Now, these viewers churn usually on average about a viewer every 45 minutes. So you can just think about how many total unique watchers there are of some of our gamers playing online.
Wow. That goes back to that viewership slide that I was talking about. So, enthusiasts are considered if they log on and watch, esports. I think it's like once a month is considered an enthusiast. But still, I mean, do you want to tell people how you find some of these games? Where do you find them?
Yeah. So I think many people will be wondering, like, how do you find the best players in the world?
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a couple of avenues how we find our players. Number one is that what's interesting about video games is that each game has sort of like an online leaderboard, kind of like Pac-Man and everything. There's an online leaderboard. And so when these guys play from home or play from the training facility, you can see who's the best, right, on a particular server or in a particular region. And so we will go into that leaderboard and say, okay, these top 100 players, let's watch their VODs, let's watch how they play, let's fly them out to LA and see how they compete, and that's how we scout our new talent. The other way is obviously we fly out people for tryouts, so we actually hold a tryout every year in LA. We fly in people, they submit their applications, we fly them in LA, we have a physical tryout, and that's how we build a lot of our academy teams. And then lastly, I mean, there's a lot of teams in the world. There's 100+ esports organizations in the world. We trades players, we buy players from other people, we sell our players to organizations. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Walter and I were talking about this, and I said, it's a little bit like going to pre-draft camp whenever we go to scout players, but not quite. But yeah, that's fascinating to me of how you actually find your players. And then, Brendan, if you can just talk a little bit with, when you started the 2K League and how you guys found this ecosystem of players. I mean, there's a lot of people that play NBA 2K League, or NBA 2K, I should say, the game itself, but playing it as a team, right? 5-on-5, 3-on-3 was a little different.
Yeah. So, I mean, our first season, so 30 million people download the game. So that's the number of people playing the game. Our first season, we put out a tryout, said, hey, tryouts will be in the game. You can come to this date. You can go play. We'll match you up with other players, and the best 100 players will emerge. And so 72,000 people tried out that first year for 102 spots. So obviously insanely competitive. But I would say that sort of accessibility is kind of one of the charming things about esports, is that anybody from home can try to do this. And so what was fascinating was we took all the rookies who were in the first draft. We took them in, we had the draft in New York. We took them out the night before, and you had all these people who had been playing with each other for, in some cases 5-6 years. They were meeting each other for the first time. And so like they would hear someone's voice. They'd be like, oh, that's so-and-so. Like it was fascinating to kind of see it all take place. But I would say the accessibility of esports is one of its, I think it's one of its biggest things. I mean, we were talking earlier before we started about how now you're seeing, all women teams in games, the accessibility for women, the accessibility for special needs individuals who maybe couldn't compete on the physical athletic field, but they can in esports. And so that's kind of thing we obviously want to lean into.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I was just saying, on that piece of the partnerships and the accessibility piece, I think there's so much that if we're in esports, we have a responsibility to help foster that, and I think one thing we were doing recently is partnering with the MLK Center to say, when they're after school youth program, bring your students to campus. We're going to help teach them around kind of 8 topical areas and then let them play right on the state of the art equipment. And so how do we kind of take that social responsibility too as part of esports and create more of that accessibility is a really important part.
Absolutely. So we have a couple questions. You want me from the group? Okay. All right. See if we can throw these questions out to you guys. Okay. With the increasing prevalence of esports, what controls are coming into play to prevent, oh, I see, cheating? Is that right? Is this a risk? Do we see do we see a lot of cheating in esports?
Yeah. I mean, like, for example, during COVID, right, everyone played from home. And so it was a lot of self-monitoring. Okay, is the coach, coaching the players while they're playing? They're not supposed to. And there's cheating that way. And there's obviously cheating from a software perspective, right? Like players can bring hacks, right, into their hardware devices or download it on their computer and allow them to see through walls, see where their opponents are, auto aim for them. And so that is actually a big thing from a technological perspective. Cheating is what a lot of publishers and developers have to combat constantly. And I mean, some games cheating is rampant, and that's a problem.
Yeah, good question. So this question is about cities that have started to use esports as an economic development strategy. You guys want to weigh in on sort of what would it take to be known, for Indianapolis to be kind of known as an esport hub or an esport city? What types of things do you think?
I mean, in many ways, we hope that this past year was that for Indianapolis. Hopefully, seeing esports, competition in the center of your city, getting inspired by Butler, we're now seeing gaming programs pop up at high schools, grade schools, etc. So absolutely, it can be. And frankly, we had 10 teams living here in Indianapolis this year. It wasn't all of our teams, but 10 teams living in Indy. So you had 50 plus players who were, new to this city. We took them around. We took them to Indy 500. We took them to games. We took them to experience the city, and they're sharing things about the city through all their content and everyone who follows them. And so you're getting a 20-year-old perspective of Indianapolis and how great it can be, and they're sharing it, digitally all across the world. So I think it's a huge opportunity.
Anything else, Walter?
Yeah, I think from localization and making cities big for esports, I think what you should take a look at is looking at what China is doing. Right? In China, League of Legends is the #1 overall IP in China. So that includes Marvel, that includes Harry Potter, whatever. League of Legends is the #1 most recognizable IP in China. And in China, now teams are building stadiums to fill for their competitions. EDG, one of the biggest teams in China, their owners were back in LA visiting last week, and they are starting construction on a $1.4 billion stadium in China.
Yeah, I think I read a couple of years ago, 56,000 people attended the League of Legends final. 56,000, just to watch the guys play on, similar to the video that we saw. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy, especially in Asia.
So we have a couple of minutes. Any other questions? We got 2 minutes. That's it. Okay, Mario, anything in your brain that we missed? I mean, you got your handle? You know what your video gamer tag is?
No, the only thing I realized as you were saying is that I'm definitely in the wrong business. So, thank you very much. Please put your hands together. Thank our panel. And it was wonderful of you guys to come over here and enlighten us when it comes to esports. The future is bright and it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time to speak to us.